And let's get started. Good morning. Good morning. And those of you who have joined us during the reflection time, good to see you as well. Glad you were here. Happy Friday morning. So, look, gang, without a doubt, life is full of uncertainty. It's a fact of life. You take a look at what's happening in the marketplace. There are market shifts, interest rates going up, inventories going up, customers' expectations, attitudes, the language that they're using, that's all shifting. And then you have, shifts within the industry, the more tectonic or foundational shifts. I remember when I got into the business in 1993, 30 years ago, coming up on 30 years ago, the MLS was a book. And for probably most of you, if not all of you, maybe with the exception of Russ, because Russ, I don't know how long you've been in the business, but you never experienced that. But literally, the MLS was a book, and the book would be published once a month, and that was current. So if you had a book that was 3.5 weeks old, it was considered current, even though it wasn't. That was as good as it got. The commission structures were completely different. I remember when I got into the business, my commission structure was a 45-55. I got 45, the brokerage got 55. The top producers got 70-30. Those were the best of the best. So, those of us in California, we know like the names of Tina Hare and Kathleen Bruno, they'd be on 70-30s back in the day. Space usage was much different. Every agent was given an office. Advertising was different. It was bus benches and shopping carts and Homes and Land and Harmon Homes magazines. All of that's changed. It's a fact of life. Change is a guarantee. It's like one of the laws of physical laws of the universe. But what's my point? Well, my point is that change is inevitable. And the other point is that not everybody deals with it the same way. So the question I have for you specifically, each individual, is how do you deal with change? How good are you at dealing with change? Are some people better at dealing with change than others? That's not a rhetorical question. Are some people better at dealing with change than others?
Yes.
Good morning, Jesus. And yes, that's true. Some are better than others. Now, are they born better? Are just some people born to deal with change better than other people? And the answer is no. No, we're not born better, at dealing with change. It is a conscious effort. And so I want to just share with you, some thoughts this morning. In 1933, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was giving his inaugural address. And, if any of us were paying attention in history class, if we took a history class, or, if we've listened to any documentaries, or just by chance happened to listen to some, motivational speaker, you may have heard this quote before. One of the quotes that he's most famous for saying is, the only thing we have to what? Anybody recognize that? The only thing that we have to what? Nobody get it yet? How about if I give you a hint? The only thing that we have to fear is
fear itself.
Fear itself, right? Really important words. The only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. No, he said that in 1933. Now, in 1933, the United States and the rest of the world was, in the throes of the Great Depression. And there was a lot of what going on? What are we dealing with right now? What's the topic this morning that we're talking about?
Fear.
Yes, fear, but fear that comes from what?
From change.
From change, from uncertainty. Yes. There was a lot of change. The U.S. economy was roaring in the 20s, and then it began to collapse, starting in 1929 with the stock market falling, and then the economy collapsed, and we had what we refer to now as the Great Depression. And here he is, leading a nation in those times of uncertainty. And his message was, look, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, which is a very interesting observation. I want you to think about this. And this is really the gist of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's point. Massive uncertainty and anxiety come from excessive focus or a fixation on what we don't control and ignoring the very things that we do control. See, his point was we can spend our days, our time fearing, right? Focusing on the things that will cause us to be fearful. And we should be afraid of that. He said you should legitimately be afraid of fear, because fear is what? It's paralyzing. It causes us to be weak. It causes us to not take action, to be tepid and to be tenuous in our actions. His point was there isn't anything else to fear but fear itself. And it goes back to what I said, that uncertainty and anxiety come from a fixation or a focus on the things that we don't control and avoiding focus on the very things that we do control. I just want you to digest that for a second. See, anything that we're afraid of, truly in its essence, is something that we either don't control or that we're not very familiar with that we could control. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
See, when we get a bit of bad news, for example, if we knew the ultimate outcome and the ultimate outcome was going to be good, even if the news initially is bad, would we be afraid knowing that ultimately it was all going to work out and everything was going to be fine and things would be better than they were before? Of course, the answer is no, we wouldn't be afraid. But none of us has a crystal ball, right? And we can't control the outcome of things that we don't control. You know, we don't get to control interest rates. We don't get to control inventories. We don't get to control who's in the White House or out of the White House or a decision of the Supreme Court. You know, we don't get to control whether there's a pandemic. None of those things are within our control. We don't get to control the competition, whether they give away their commissions to get a deal. None of those things that we can control. You know, we don't ultimately get to control the tectonic shifts of the industry, right? What the MLS looks like or doesn't look like. You know, what advertising looks like or doesn't look like, the prevailing, you know, norms. Those things aren't within our control. But what is within our control, you know, it's a beautiful thing. It's very simple. It's the fundamentals. The fundamentals, because they never change. It's so interesting that in 1993, the fundamentals were the same as they are today. It's so interesting. I was listening to a video clip of Justice Clarence Thomas speaking, and he said, it doesn't matter if it is a tornado or a hurricane or a blizzard, north is still north. It doesn't matter if, you know, you're in Antarctica or you're in Belize or you're in Australia or you're in Canada or you're in Russia or China, north is still north. There are certain fundamental things that don't change. So the question I want to ask you is, are you anxious? Just for a moment, pause and really think about the way in which you're behaving and thinking, and are you anxious? Are you overly anxious? Are you maybe more anxious than you would like to be? And then the next question I would ask you is, what is your focus? What are you focused on? Are you focused on the things that you can't control, or are you focused on the things that you can control? Because here's the good news. The fundamentals, the things that fundamentally matter, I love that phrase, fundamentally matter. The fundamentals, those are the things that we have control over. So my question is, are you focused on those things versus the things that you don't control? Because I'm having a lot of conversations with agents who are concerned about interest rates. They're concerned about the fact that prices may fall. In other words, they're focused on the things that ultimately they don't control. So what is your focus? Remember, victims focus on problems. Victors focus on solutions. See, each individual has the opportunity every single day to decide to focus on problems or to focus on solutions. We could say that rising interest rates, that's a problem. We could say that that the buyers' attitudes or sellers' attitudes in a shifting market, that's a problem. Fine. But my question is, what are the solutions? In other words, shifting the focus from the things that ultimately we don't control, because we don't get to control ultimately whether interest rates go up or down or inventories go up or down, but we do get to fundamentally change the way in which we respond to those things and the conversations that we have with our clients. And most importantly, the conversations we have with ourselves every single day as we go out there to the battlefield, really, so to speak, of real estate. So remember, it's the fundamentals. So again, there are three things that I want you to write down in terms of fundamentals that we should be focused on. That if you will focus on these three things, that I promise you, it does not matter whether it's a snowstorm, a hailstorm, a windstorm, a hurricane, a tornado, it doesn't matter. North is north. If you focus on these things, you'll get a great outcome. Because let me remind you, Century 21 Everest as a company was founded in what is considered the most difficult economic times since the Great Depression, what we call now the Great Recession. Those periods of time from 2006 to about 2011, where half of the agents who were in the business got out and half the brokerages got out of the business. They failed, right? We know that if you focus on the right things, you can create phenomenal things. You can create things that are significant. You can experience great outcomes, because that is the Everest experience. So the three things that I want you to consider, number one is your job. See, that's one thing you have control over, is your job. Fundamentally sticking to your job, doing the things that we know that if you'll do them consistently, you're going to get great outcomes. We know that, for example, gang, if we want to lose weight, what do? There are two things that you should normally do if you want to lose weight. Number one, you should engage in calorie control. Reduce the amount of calories that you eat if you want to lose weight, right? The other thing would be to engage in some physical exercise. We know that if those two things are fundamentally happening, that you will lose weight. It's guaranteed. It's written in stone. It never changes. And the truth is, in real estate, that if you do your job and do it consistently, regardless of what's happening, you're going to succeed. Now, I've had a lot of agents say, well, for example, the job is to prospect, right? And it's to follow up with people, and it's to set appointments, and it's to present and get contracts signed. And they'll say, well, I'm doing that thing. I'm prospecting, I'm not getting the results. And then I'll get into the detail of it and say, well, how often are you doing it? How many hours are you doing it? How often do you skip out or not engage in it for the amount of time that you said that you were going to, right? What version of yourself do you bring to it? What attitude do you bring to that scenario, to that opportunity to have conversations with people? And what I find is that there isn't consistency in the level of activity that's required to get the results that they want. So they think that the activity is broken, when in fact it's not the activity. It's not the fundamental of prospecting that's broken. It's the way in which they're doing it. They don't do it consistently. Gang, I just want you to remember this. The great equalizer in life, especially when it comes to a skill set, when it comes to prospecting, is consistency. I don't care how long you've been in the business, whether it's a day or a decade or 30 years, you will always get better results if you are consistent. And I can prove to you that over and over again. Agents who are brand new in the business will get better results than a veteran when they are more consistent. So the question I have for you is, what are you focused on? Are you fearful, and are you focused on the right things? And are you taking control of the things that you can actually focus on and control? Are you prospecting consistently to a level that, regardless of what's going on in the marketplace, you'll have the business that's necessary for you to achieve your best year ever? Because here's a guarantee. There are agents in this company, in our marketplace, who will have their best year ever this year, because they won't shift their focus from the things they don't control, or to the things they don't control, from the things they do control. They will maintain their focus on the very fundamental things that they know that if they do them, that they will get great outcomes. And it starts with doing your job, prospecting. So if you feel uncertainty, if you're anxious, gang, the number one thing that you can do is to begin to take control of and engage in the activities that matter most. It doesn't matter if interest rates are going up. Do you realize that the historic average for interest rates is about 6.5%? We're still below that. When I got into the business, interest rates were between 8.5% and 9%. And I remember in my adolescent years, interest rates got up to 18, 19%, and real estate was still being bought and sold. So interest rates were irrelevant. What was relevant was, did the agents who were in the marketplace at that time focus on the very things that allowed them to help people buy and sell real estate? Did they get in the way? Because people are still going to die and and there will be estate sales. People are going to get married and need to get their own homes. Families will downsize, they will upsize, they will relocate. There are all sorts of reasons. They will have financial difficulty. People are going to buy and sell real estate in today's marketplace. The question is, are you going to fundamentally focus on the activities that will allow you to get in the way to help those people buy and sell real estate? In other words, doing your job, because that is the one thing that you do control. The second is your mindset. Are you doing what is necessary on a daily basis to build your mindset? See, you can focus on all of those negative stories that the media pushes to sell advertising to make money, because that's how they make money, pushing the negative stories, the negative narratives. Or you can focus on messages designed to help you build and grow who you are fundamentally from the inside out. Are you reading the right things? Are you watching the right things? Are you listening to the right things? Are you participating like Morning Ascent consistently, not once in a while, but every single morning? Are you attending base camps, summits? Are you listening to messages from others like the Zig Ziglars and the Tony Robbins and the Earl Nightingales and the Brian Tracys and the Les Browns? And the list goes on and on. Are you listening to those proactively every single day? Because that's what it takes. It's like, how often do you take a bath? Once a week? Once a month? No, you do it, hopefully, every single day. Well, your brain, if you don't cleanse it every day, it starts to stink. Zig Ziglar called it stinking thinking. A lot of people have some pretty stinking thinking because they don't fundamentally understand that it's something that they control. Most people wake up and they have a negative attitude, or they don't feel confident. They think, well, that's just the way it is because of all of these things that are going on in the world. And the answer is no, that's not true. It's because they choose to focus on those things and not instill in their brain the positive messages. So take control of what you put into your brain. Be that sentinel, stand guard at the gates of your mind and only allow the good things in. And when people in a market like this or in uncertain times want to have negative conversations, tell them, whoa, time out. We're not going to have that conversation because we don't get to control those things. But what we do get to control is the actions that we take and the information that we put in. So let's talk about things that are positive. Let's talk about things that are good, because there's plenty of good that's going on in the world. You just have to look for it. You will find what you're looking for, gang. Whether it's a message or it's a listing, you will find what you're looking for, but you have to be consistent at it. Read, watch, listen, associate, participate with messages and people that will instill a sense of confidence in your mind. And then the final thing is skills. Gang, it is so interesting the level of income that real estate agents expect, and yet they don't practice consistently the very skills that they need to go out and do that. If you take a look at any other profession, doctors, for example, or professional athletes, or actors or actresses, they are consistently practicing their skills that are required by their profession in order to earn the amounts of dollars that they earn. You look at the number of years that, for example, a brain surgeon has to go to school in order to actually operate on a brain. It's 12 years plus, at least 12 years. The amount of time that they have to spend in the classroom and then consistently work on maintaining and updating their knowledge and expertise in that field. It's constant in order to make the millions of dollars that they make. So gang, if you want to earn a lot of money in real estate, you have to focus on improving your skills every single day. Are you focused on that? Have you set aside the time? Look, I know this, that if you'll focus on your job, recognize what it is, and you begin to do it. If you recognize that you fundamentally, you have control over your mindset and the way that you think, and you're constantly standing there saying, yes, you as a message, you get in, but no, you're negative, you don't get in. If you're doing that consistently and you're focused on building your skill set, I promise you, immediately, you will feel more control in your life. And when you feel more control, you feel less anxious. You feel less uncertainty. Control leads to less uncertainty, and less uncertainty leads to more confidence, and more confidence leads to better results. So to Justice Clarence Thomas's point, it doesn't matter what storm is going on. North is north. Don't forget the fundamentals. And if you'll pay attention to the fundamentals, gang, I promise you, you can have your best year ever in 2022. I promise you. Just don't forget the fundamentals and focus on the things ultimately that you control. Fair enough? Any thoughts or questions before we wrap it up?
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey, you know what, John? I think the main thing is the consistency. You gotta have it. It's not one of those things you can kind of lean on today and not tomorrow. You got to do it every day, and that's what I'm concentrating on myself.
Yeah, Mike, you're right. It is important because it's exhausting to start something and stop it, start and stop it. It's like trying to push a car. If you ever tried to push a car that, ran out of gas and you push it, imagine pushing it and it maybe starts to roll just a little bit, you stop. And then you have to dig your shoulder back into it again to start it again. The most difficult part are those initial few, seconds and pushing it. That's what most people do. They start to feel the resistance. And so then they give up. And they're constantly in that state of like massive maximum resistance. Whereas if they would push and as it began to roll, not stop, it would begin to build momentum and it becomes easier. So it's a great point. Anybody else? Okay, gang. Well, just remember, you have control over this. You have the ability to focus on the things that fundamentally matter that will make a true difference in the outcomes that you get. So be conscious about that. Pay attention to that and go out there and look, have your best year ever. There's no reason you can't.